Good evening and welcome to the Ann Arbor District Library on AADL TV. Thanks for tuning in for tonight's Q&A about foster care in Michigan with representatives from the Judson Center, DHHS, and community volunteers. In just a moment, Edward Peat will introduce our guests. To find past programs and see all of our upcoming virtual events, visit AADL TV.
I'd like to welcome everybody to our Q&A session for Washtenaw County. We have our DHHS worker, Trisha. We also have Zelma, which is our foster care navigator. They're going to be answering any questions that you may have about foster care. And I'm going to let them give a brief introduction of what they do. And we're going to go from there with the Q&A session. Zelma, you want to start?
Sure. I'm Zelma Crawford. Like Edward said, I'm a foster care navigator. I've been working for Judson Center for almost 3 years, but I've been mentoring and navigating people through the licensure process for many years on a vendor platform for DHHS. I'm also a mentor now for foster parents. So once you become licensed, I'll stay with all my clients for about 6 months to a year through their first placement and answer any questions they may have. And after COVID is over, we don't know, I'll probably be going out meeting people, helping them problem solve some things in the home as well. But as far as a foster care navigator, what I do is I navigate people through the licensing process, to call them every couple of weeks, make sure that they're staying on task, make sure they're getting their paperwork done, getting their trainings in, and make sure that they're communicating with their licensing worker. And as a navigator, we are also pride trainers. So we see our clients in the actual training to become a foster parent as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that introduction. Trish, you want to let them know what you do?
Yes, good morning, everybody. I'm Trisha Lerette. I am with Washtenaw County Department of Health and Human Services. I am currently a foster care supervisor. I supervise direct foster care workers, purchase of service foster care workers. I supervise 2 of our licensing workers that license foster homes. And then I supervise our juvenile justice and funding specialist as well. I've been with the department for about 18 years now. I probably shouldn't say that, but you know, I have been. And I've done pretty much everything you can do in child welfare that the state has to offer.
All right, thank you very much. And we also have a guest on here, Jeanice. Would you like to give a brief introduction of yourself?
Still learning that mute. My name is Jeanice Townsend. I am a local realtor as well as community advocate, and also a former foster care child, I guess, or child in foster care. And so I work a lot with the community on different programming through several organizations that I work with, including Zeta Phi Beta Sorority, as well as the Ypsilanti Community School District. So various different organizations, Ypsilanti Rotary, where we do a lot of programming for young people. And so this was an opportunity that came my way due to Edward's presentation to the Rotary. And so I'm glad to be here today.
Thank you very much for all that. Now we're going to get started with some frequently asked questions. And Jeanice, if you have any questions too, feel free to jump in and ask them as well. For Zelma, what do you think is the difference between foster care and adoption?
The difference between foster care and adoption is foster care is a placement that is made where where the agency is working toward reunification with the family, the birth family that is. Where adoption is once rights have been terminated of the child or children, we're working toward a more permanent placement with the home, a forever home for that child through adoption.
All right, thank you very much. Trish, do you have to own your own home to become a foster parent?
No, you do not have to own your own home. You can rent. That's perfectly acceptable.
All right, thank you. Just for either one of you, you have to have a lot of money to be a foster parent?
Nope, you don't. You just have to have a legal source of income.
All right. Jeanice, do you have any questions?
So with that being asked, due to, we know there's a lot of cost in raising a child, what type of supplemental income is provided if you become a foster parent, and what resources are out there for additional services such as insurances, and if that child needs any psychological help, what services are available?
Great question. So the state, if the child is under the care and supervision of the department, the state provides Medicaid for that child. So their medical coverage is paid for while they're in care. So that's not anything that the foster parent has to worry about. The foster parent, once they become licensed and have a placement, they do receive a stipend. It is not a lot of money, but it is a stipend to help pay for the care of that child. And it ranges depending on the age of the child or children that they have in their home. The daily rate starts at $17.24 a day for children 0 to 12, and children 13 to 18, it starts at $20.59 a day. And then there are what we call determination of care rates, depending on if a child may have some more mental health needs and there's a lot of care involved with that child. We can do determination of cares that add additional monies onto those rates. But that again is based on per child, and every child's needs are different. We also provide clothing allowances for kids when they come into care, and then we provide those clothing allowances semi-annually throughout the year so that, obviously kids change, the seasons change, they need new clothes. We can work to get that taken care of. And then sometimes for the older youth that maybe have job interviews and those kinds of things, we have funds available to help get them clothing for interviews and senior pictures, prom, graduation stuff. We have what we call youth and transition funds for the older youth that help pay for those extra things that come along, driver's education, computer for school, all those kinds of things.
And what type of, when you're looking at a foster parent, what is the criteria that you require?
You have to live in a home somewhere, whether you own it, rent it, or purchasing it, however that looks, but you do have to have a home because we license you as the person, and then we do license the home in which you're residing. So if you move and you're licensed, we then go to your new home and write up a new report and issue a license for that home, if that makes sense. But then you have to have some sort of form of income, because sometimes we try not to, but sometimes there are snafus with getting those payments started. So you do have to have some form of income initially to kind of keep you moving along in case there is a delay. Like I said, we try to minimize that delay and we try not to have any delays, but sometimes through technology errors, no fault of anybody else's, there's a delay with things. But other than that, we ask that you love kids. And that's pretty much it. You can't have a long criminal history. There are certain varying requirements with the criminal history that we look at, but I mean, we get in depth and we do a thorough searches and checks on things, but we really just ask that you love kids.
Okay.
I don't know, Zelma, if there's anything you want to add to that.
No, I think that you did a good job, but just remember when we are getting homes licensed that you have to make sure that you have the bedroom space available for the child. Because sometimes we do have people who are thinking that they live in a 1-bedroom home and that they can get licensed for 2 or 3 kids and they can sleep on the couch, but it's just not that way. We still have to follow the licensing guidelines for the foster home.
Yes, good point. Thanks, Zelma.
Okay, Zelma, what part does a foster care navigator play as far as if I want to become a foster parent?
So if you wanted to become a foster parent and you call the 855-MISH-KIDS line, or you're at an event where people like Edward is recruiting foster parents, then they'll get the information to the navigators. Across the whole state, there are navigators. And then what we do is we follow up on the client. We answer questions, we offer resources, we send trainings out. If they're curious about how oppositional defiant disorder works, we're gonna find a training that they can attend for that. And we're going to call every 2 weeks and ask them, did you get your orientation done? Have you done pride training? Are you working on your fingerprints? Did you get CPR done? So we're like little pests to make sure that they're getting things done and that they're getting things done timely. So we're looking at if we're calling them and reminding them every 2 weeks that maybe they can get licensed within 6 months to a year.
Okay. If I'm not able to make a recruitment meeting or not able to call, is there a website I can look at?
Yes. The Foster Care Navigator program has a website, which is fostercarenavigatorprogram.org or fcnp.org.
Okay. This could be for either one of you. How long does the process take to become a foster parent?
So typically, as Zelma kind of alluded to in her last question, it takes about 6 months. Sometimes it can take a little less depending on how motivated the licensee is to become licensed. And sometimes it can take a little longer, again, depending on the motivation of the licensee. And sometimes that time frame is dependent on if we send a report up to Lansing to issue a license, they may have more questions that they want answered. We try to do our best and anticipate anything that they might ask and answer that before they even have the chance to ask it. But generally about 6 months, sometimes a little longer.
Okay, and during the orientation process, what all did you go through?
So during the orientation, we cover kind of a snapshot of what it's like to be a foster parent, some of the requirements, training wise, some of what you'll have to go through to become licensed, and then a snapshot of maybe some of the issues you might encounter while being a foster parent.
Okay. In Washtenaw County, how many kids would you say are in the foster care system?
Currently for Washtenaw County, our numbers are around 175 children in care at the moment.
Okay. And before they get placed, where do the children normally stay at or live?
So before they get placed, if they're not under the care and supervision of DHHS, they're wherever they were prior to removal, whether that's with their biological family, whether it's friends of the family, whatever that situation looks like. Sometimes they're in safety plans that the parents have created with the agency to try to prevent a removal, and sometimes that doesn't always work. So it just depends, but most of the time they're with biological family.
Okay.
Oh, I have a quick question. So
Okay.
I like I said, I was originally adopted. My mother passed when I was 17, and then I went into foster care. And one of the best placements I could say ever. Shout out to my parents, Otis and Evelyn Gregory. And they've been in foster care for 45 plus years, and they still have children. So the question that I have is that seeing how they have navigated through this process, the primary goal from how everything was explained to me is that there's always the goal to reunify the kids with their biological parents. Can you tell us what steps are typically put in place for that reunification, and what foster parents should expect emotionally? Because, you know, people can get attached to the kids, and we want to make sure that they understand the difference of truly adopting a child versus what your role is as a foster parent.
So maybe this can be a two-part answer, and I can probably answer the part about the reunification and the services and those kinds of things. And I've never been a foster parent myself. So maybe Zelma, if you want to take the second part of that, that would be helpful. So you're right. The goal of when children come into care 99% of the time, or 99.9% of the time, the goal is reunification of those children, or that child or children, with their birth families. And we work hard to do that. We provide services to the parents as well as the kids. That can be counseling services, parenting services, substance abuse services, whatever that family needs. Each case is unique and different. And many years ago when I started, we used to have these very cookie cutter, if you will, service plans for families. And we've really gotten away from that and are really focusing truly on each family and their needs and what needs to happen to successfully reunify those children.
Okay, and I hope I remember all of this. I'm older. I am a parent of 11 children, a single parent of 11 children. I have 4 biological and 6 adopted, and one that I didn't adopt, but he's still my son, and he looks more like me than anyone. I'll explain that. But I do want to say, when I was fostering, because I had 3 children that I did not adopt, I was heartbroken when they left, but I tried to make sure as a foster parent, I felt like my job was to enhance who they were, not to change them, but to enhance who they were. So I tried to give them tools so that when they went home, that they could take some of the stress off the parents by being able to do some things for themselves. But as an adoptive mom, I adopted a sib group of 5, as well as a single adoption. And what I think that from that, it was a learning experience for me. I was kind of young, I would say. And I thought that, at first I thought that, okay, I'm going to adopt them. I'm going to give them a home. I want them to be like a little Zelma, but that wasn't who they were. And then I had to go back to some of the thoughts that I had about fostering, that I have to enhance who they are. Because they are themselves, they have the attributes, DNA of their parents. And so I try to focus on enhancing that part of them and to reassure myself that I'm okay with any child who I adopt who doesn't adopt me. Because all kids don't adopt us as parents, but we adopt them. And to make sure that even though everybody is an adult now, I'm all done, yay, that I am still parenting them. Even my daughter who's married, I still have to give her tips as far as parenting her so that she can parent her own children. So when we adopt children, it's a lifetime commitment that as adults that we make to a child, not a commitment that they make to us. And we have to make sure that we understand and respect that.
Great answer. And then my other question is, a lot of times there is a stereotype that when children are in foster care, that is something that they may have done to be in that situation, or they may have behavioral issues, when the reality of it is because they were put in a situation that was not controllable for them and had to be removed. Can you kind of let us know how do you all try to work to reduce that stereotype, and what is it that people may need to know to ensure them that, you know, there are some wonderful kids that just simply need placement?
Great question.
For myself is, even with pride training, I start there by letting people know that children are children. Some of our children that come into foster care are more traumatized depending on what the abuse or neglect was prior to coming into care. So we have to make sure that we alleviate any further abuse or neglect to those children. And also, anybody who came into my home, we went to counseling, not just them going to counseling. I went with them, and I was very active in their counseling sessions so that I could learn techniques as well as being their mother on what I could do to help them to move forward. Trauma, it does change, it alters who we are, but it doesn't define who we're going to be. And so that was my mission with my children, to let them know, yes, we've all gone through some things, whether we're biological, foster, or whatever, but we can all learn how to move past those things with the right assistance and help.
Yeah. And for the agency, you know, it's really advocating for those kiddos and making their voice known, because they haven't necessarily had that. And we try to reassure our kids when they're coming into care that this is nothing that they have done. It's circumstances beyond their control. And get them, as Zelma said, a lot of kids have trauma, and that level of trauma is different for every kiddo based on whatever they've experienced and maybe at what age they experience those things. But really advocating for them in the school systems, in the communities in which they reside. We're making a real big push to really try to keep kids in the communities in which they are residing in, because that's their family and their supports, and that's where they need to be. So advocating for them in their communities, in their schools, and even with their families to get them what they need, and educating everybody involved.
All right, very good. Thank you for your answers. As far as the difference, do you see if you have your own kids and you go and get foster kids, do you treat them all the same, or do you feel like you treat them differently because they're coming from a foster family?
In my experience, what we train foster parents is you treat them all the same.
Okay.
They're all kids in your home. It doesn't matter.
What do you do if you decide to foster a kid, but you're having problems with them and you're not sure if you want to keep with the process? How do you convince the parent to stay with it?
So we do a lot from the agency perspective. We advocate for keeping those lines of communication open. The sooner that you can let your foster care worker know that's assigned to the kiddo that's placed in your home, even your licensing worker, the sooner that you can tell people, hey, this is what I'm noticing, this is what I'm seeing, the sooner we can get the appropriate services in to help address that and to help support them and support you as the foster parent. We try to help prevent those changes of placement, but again, like I said, sometimes it doesn't work out. And we then look for a new foster home that may be a better fit for that child.
Okay.
Like I said, every child has different needs, and sometimes families aren't as equipped to deal with some of those needs as maybe they initially thought that they were.
Okay. As far as how are the kids matched with families? Like, how do you decide who goes where?
So we try to do our best from the onset of when kiddos may potentially be coming into care to get as much information about them as we can. And then we talk with our foster families and see, are you a good fit for this child? Would you be able to be a match for this child? And if we don't have something within our agency, we reach outside to other agencies that have licensed homes. We try to really make the best fit possible. And a lot of times, to be honest with you, that's family.
Okay.
You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be a licensed foster home. That's family. Maybe it's auntie or uncle or, you know, grandma, grandpa, or whoever. But a lot of times that's family that knows that kiddo can be the best support for them.
Okay. Now, if it's like siblings are you required to foster all the siblings, or I know they typically don't want to split up, but are you required to take all of them in?
You're not. Nope. We do have some rules within DHHS about how many kiddos you can have placed in your home, but there's always exceptions.
Right.
So we try hard to keep kiddos together, siblings together, because a lot of times we don't want to add to that trauma. It's traumatizing enough. If they have to be removed and placed outside of the parental home, we try to keep them with family. If we can't keep them with family, we're looking at licensed homes within their communities, but we try really hard to keep siblings together because that's just one more layer of trauma that we don't want to add to the situation.
Okay, good answer. This is for either one of you. What type of relationship do you have to have with the biological family or parents if they're around?
You don't have to have any if you don't want.
Okay.
Sometimes it's a safety thing as to why we may not have, whether it be family members or licensed foster parents that are placements of these children have contact with the birth parents initially. But in my experience as a caseworker and as a supervisor, to me, the placements that work out the best and the most successful reunifications happen when the caregiver and the parent have a relationship. It shows that they're unified and working towards the same goal, and the kiddos see that they're on the same page, and it just makes things go a lot smoother. But sometimes that's not always the case, but in my experience, that's where I've seen the best success.
Okay.
Can I
Thank
say
you.
something too, Edward,
Yes.
if you don't mind? The one thing that I've noticed with my birth parents from the three that I did not adopt is that I build a rapport with them, and they supported me, I supported them. And then when they returned home, they still came around.
Okay.
Some of them would come, every summer. Two of them would come every summer for a couple of weeks, the father said, but it'd be like a month, and I'd have to call them, could you come get your kids now? But I still have a relationship with those two adults now, and with children. They still bring their children around as well. So I think if you can safely build a rapport with them and to have that relationships, even the children that return home, they'll still contact you as long as you were a good parent to them.
Okay. Thank you. Would you guys say typically more younger kids or teenagers are typically placed quicker?
In my experience, it's easier to place the younger children than it is the older children. We typically see the older children get placed with family more than we do in licensed homes.
Okay. And then how long are they allowed to be in the foster care system? Like what happens to them once they reach of age?
So that's kind of a complicated question, but short answer.
Okay.
Kiddos can remain in our care under the court supervision until they're 20.
Okay.
And then after that, we have a program called Young Adult Voluntary Foster Care, which allows kiddos to stay with us and get the extra supports that case managers can provide until the age of 21. That's a voluntary program. It helps them with a stipend, but it also helps them with the additional supports of a case manager and connections to some of those community resources and services that they still may need. So short answer, 20.
Okay.
21 voluntarily, sometimes 18, and then it ends, and then they can still stay with us voluntarily until they're 21.
Okay.
So I want to jump in right there because I actually was able to be under the state's care until I was 21. And so with my senior year that I went into foster care, they were able to, give me all of the services that to help me transition to adulthood. When I went away to school in Michigan State, they called it adult. I don't know what it was, another program, but it was called something adult living or something like that. And I did receive the stipend up till I was 21, but also when filling out for financial aid forms and things, because I was still legally a ward of the court, it allowed me to be able to finance my education because it opened up the doors for more grants. Typically, kids that are in foster care will be eligible for the TIP program, which was introduced under Governor Blanchard, where the state will provide assistance with paying for college tuition. And that's huge because back then in the 90s, they had mostly the community colleges. Now Michigan State is on there. Wayne State, it's a whole bunch of four-year universities that are on there. So there are programs out there to assist young people with even getting their education, even due to the fact of the situation. So I wanted to just go off of what Zelma had said. Pretty much, your situation does not dictate your future. And so people need to really make sure that they are properly researching what resources that are out there. I was able to still maintain insurances through Medicaid and other different services such as counseling, things such as that because of the program. And I think people need to know and do proper research to make sure that they are aware of what's out there. But, we hear pros and cons with foster care and the things that happen, but there's more positives. People need to understand that there's more positives than negatives. It's just all about how we do our researches and how we utilize the resources that are out there.
All right, thank you. One final thing for me, as far as if you get a special needs kid, are there additional resources that kind of help you with that process or like help you dealing with special needs?
Yeah, so I can help answer that. Yes, there are. We talked about in the beginning about some of those financial resources that are available. Kiddos that may have some more special needs might qualify for those determination of cares that might enhance the financial services available to the foster parent to help with their care. But then we can also work with, if there's medical needs for that child, working with their medical providers and getting those needs for them. Sometimes they're coming right from the hospital and coming to us and being placed with family members or licensed foster parents. And we work with the hospital to get the appropriate in-home care services that they might need and get that going right from the start.
Okay, thank you. Jeanice, you have any other questions or?
Yes, how can the community be better advocates for the foster care system, and how can they work with you all to volunteer to get the word out?
Just being aware and being mindful of what's going on around them is a big help. For one, we do have a need within our community to have licensed foster parents. So if there's anybody listening that wants to become a foster parent or has that desire and has more questions, please reach out to the Foster Care Navigator program or reach out to your local DHHS office or one of the private agencies within your community and start that line of communication so that we can talk with you and get you the correct information. I think a lot of times there's incorrect information floating around out there. So getting the correct information to you so that they can make informed decisions about how they want to help. And maybe it's not, you don't want to be a licensed foster parent, but maybe it's, sometimes we have a need to have respite care for providers sometimes, because sometimes it's a lot of work. And maybe it's, you want to be cleared to help your neighbor be a respite care provider for the children that they have with them. Or maybe it's, we work a lot with the faith-based community as well. So maybe it's getting involved with your church and seeing how you can support us with various activities that we do throughout the year. But you know, there's always a level of involvement you can have, just whatever you're comfortable with. We're honestly grateful for anything and everything we can get.
So you had mentioned respite care. Are there other forms of foster care opportunities out there besides just the traditional foster care platform?
Yeah, so we do have sometimes the need, like I said, for respite care, but then we do have some of those older youth who don't necessarily want to be in a foster home, and they need some more independence and they need some guidance and skill, but they don't want to be in a foster home. So we have what we call independent living provider homes, where maybe you rent a room in your home to a youth, but you're there to help guide them a little bit and provide a little bit of support. You don't even necessarily have to be licensed to do that. You do have to pass some clearances and we still have to check out your home, but you don't necessarily have to be licensed to do that. So there are other forms of support that we could use in terms of providers for kiddos, if that was something somebody was interested in.
Thank you.
I don't know, Zelma, did I forget anything?
No, I don't think so. But one area that I often tell people, if they don't want to be licensed as a foster parent, but just want to find something that their hands could do, is also the state has volunteer services. So maybe that's an option to get involved with volunteer services. I had my daughter do it before because she acted like she was bored and actually ended up liking it. She did a lot of transportation for Genesee County Department of Health and Human Services as a volunteer service worker. She didn't get paid, she just got mileage, but it was something that she could do to feel like she was contributing to a community.
All right, that's going to conclude our Q&A session. Zelma or Trisha, do you have any closing remarks, maybe anything we missed before we sign off?
My closing remark would be to make sure, if you're interested in fostering, if you're interested in volunteer services, if you're interested in, sometimes people call us about donations or you just have questions, you can always find answers at 855-MISH-KIDS, MICHKID. And just give us a call and we'll get you to where you need to be.
Great, nothing for me. I think we kind of answered everything, but as Zelma said, if you have questions, please reach out. That's the best way to get information.
I do have a final remark too.
Okay.
Just from a community standpoint, I think we just need to really be mindful that there are a lot of children out there that requires a strong village, and that village includes everyone here today and everyone in the community. You never know what that child may grow up to be, or who he or she is destined to be, and it's always good to help someone just because someone most likely helped you. And so even if you're not able to be a foster care parent, at least volunteer your time, make donations, as well as work with other agencies such as the Foster Closet, the different school districts that are out there, and just always make sure that we are available to mentor our children. I thank you all for this opportunity, and I look forward to working with you all in the near future.
All right, thank you. I'd like to thank all our speakers that came on today. Everybody that's watching this video, hopefully we can inspire some people to become foster parents. Like you said, please contact us. You can follow the website, FCNP, or you can call us at 855-MISH-KIDS. Thank you.